think this is going. Hopefully, the sound is okay. Um, Wanting to connect with you guys, I mentioned that I was going to be doing a video soon about this vulnerability series, so that's what I'm hoping to do today. And as always, nothing scripted. This is all raw, coming through in packets of information. So just be patient with me. Vulnerability. It's a tremendously scary thing for many, and was for me very, very much so as well. And that's why this needed to come through. We seem to hide behind these masks, these illusions, these characters until we don't. Life will chip away at the mask and the character and the ego and all the things we label this. Even the body, life will chip away at that, exposing us, exposing our vulnerability. And it's not doing this to terrify us, although that's how it feels when it's happening. It's doing this because we're ready. And those things that we hold on to that seem to shield us from it, like protective blankets, if you will fall away naturally, organically. It could be a relationship. It could be the way the body's showing up. It could be a disease. It could be an experience. It could be a lot of things that we seem to clasp onto and somewhat hide behind. I can list many that I'm aware of that, since my near-death experience, were my buffers, if you will, or things to clasp to. And life just naturally started causing them to collapse. And again, it happens organically. This isn't a push or a pull thing, guys. In the last couple of years, when I deactivated my page and, my YouTube channel went quiet, there was a lot of self-work happening while I was also preparing my son for college. And there was a desire to fully immerse myself in those last few years with him home, which I don't regret, not a second of it. It was the absolute biggest gift I could have given myself and him. And sorry if you hear Milo panting. I have the fireplace on because I'm always cold and he's always hot. So that is our love relationship. So you'll hear him panting and you'll see me hovered by the fireplace. This is real life. I've mentioned in most recent videos that there was a crumbling or almost another near-death experience in the drive home from dropping my son off at college. And I can truly identify with that being one of my biggest strands of attachment and control that needed to collapse. And in the last 7 months, there's been this enormous vulnerability and rawness surge happening here on many levels. So as I always do, I can only share from the story of Kelly, from this apparent experiential thing happening with this meat suit. And I will only speak to that. I can't speak to what's happening out there for each of you and the aspects of others. As that identity of mother, need to be caregiver, need to be caretaker, collapsed naturally, organically, as was intended. There was this euphoria and fear and vulnerability and terror and excitement and all of that blended together, sweet and salty, like you could ever imagine, just moments of pure euphoria and bliss, and then evenings and mornings of complete devastation and collapse. Just what is next? My whole life seemed to have been built to be a mother. It's something that I have always wanted, and Declan was a miracle baby. I was told I would never have children, and so to get that gift, and then to be able to celebrate it alone, all of the things that I thought were my hells became my heavens. And then just to dive into it so wondrously and celebrate him for 18 years and then have that whole thing perfectly go away. Of course, I supported it and wanted it. In fact, encouraged him to go away to a 4-year school because I knew it was the best thing for both of us in our evolution. And yet, there was a vulnerability and a rawness and an awareness that collapse left all this space. Go lay down, my love. Go on, go lay down. Left all this space of being with this new thing that doesn't know what it's supposed to be, that identified itself as a mother. And yet awareness that that's not all that was ever happening here, right? The witness totally watching all of this expose itself as the lie that it is. And as that collapse continued, there became this evolution of looking vulnerability in the face fully. The body healing itself. The last 5 years of working through all of these terrifying diagnoses that I was receiving from doctors. I never shared how bad that actually got, but I was going blind. I was losing my vision slowly. And I felt that I was dying. I really did. As the thyroid continued to have issues and all of the autoimmune things that were rising in my body were happening, and nobody could tell me what it was. I was getting diagnosed as having lupus and MS and just all of these terrifying things. Something inside of me just kept saying, trust. Just trust. None of that's your truth. None of that is yours unless you believe it. And something in me just didn't believe it, to the point of literally on December 4th, 2017, I woke up and I said, today I am done. I am done with doctors. I am done with diagnoses. I am done with medication. I am done with feeling sick and diseased and miserable and tired and angry and all of these things that were associated with the collapse of the body. And of course, this was before Declan leaving for school. I fired all the doctors. I said, I'm done. I got up on December 4th. Who knows why that was the day? December 4th, 2017. I remember like it was yesterday. And I said, I'm done. I walked in my kitchen. I cleaned every cupboard out. And I said, today I start fasting. Something intuitively in me knew. Today is the day. Didn't know how I was going to do it. Didn't know how it was all going to come together. I just knew. And that was when my physical body healing started. Getting all the processed foods out of my body. Anything refined. Anything that came out of a box or a jar or a can. Done. Just done. No more. And it was a slow evolution. And fasting became part of my norm. And as I continued to do that and get clearer and clearer, more meditation, more pull to quiet the mind, more pull to go inward, and realizing how much more clarity was available when all of the fuzziness went away. So that seemed to be the first phase of this vulnerability, if you look at it as a phased approach. which again is part of the story. And as the fasting took hold and I started feeling more and more free and recognizing how much I could truly do, mind over matter is really where it comes down to, because when you recognize that you have the ability to effectively control the body, there's a whole new layer of ability to dive in other areas of your life. So that's what happened. The drive to become free outweighed the desire for anything else. And when I say free, I mean free of fear, free of being afraid of vulnerability, free of worrying about delivering a message to someone and it somehow impacting them in some way, free of believing any of this stuff going on up here. Yes, fasting played into that with the clarity that came from that. But again, I don't think any of these apparent keys were the one key. The subtlety of this is what's the key. But all the other stuff that seems to cloud it is where we get stuck, which is why I keep saying finger pointing to moon, because there's so many fingers pointing to the moon because the moon can't be spoken. So all these things that seem to be the vehicles or the tools to get there, the fingers, the fasting, the freedom of thoughts, the inquiry, the ability to ask questions and turn things around, the ability to discern, and the apparent desire and apparent obedience to meditation and living a life of intention. Those are fingers. None of them are the solution. So don't get hung up on any of these things I'm pointing to. If I go fast, this is going to happen. Or if I go do, this is going to happen. I only speak to these things because they seem to have been what unfolded for me in the story of Kelly, but I think it's unique for each of us. And so don't get hung up on some kind of a process or a teaching here. Again, I'm not here to be your teacher. I'm here to share my journey. And if it somehow assists you along your path, fabulous. And if it doesn't, toss it away. There's nothing to be sold here. There's nothing to be bought here. And there's nothing to mimic here. This is sharing. That's it. So the fasting began. The apparent obedience to going within. What seemed to be an awareness of the closing in of the time to take my son to college and noticing the fear coming up with that. All of these things were happening. Developing new relationships with people I didn't know that just dropped into my experience. Opening my heart, opening my mindset, opening the idea that I could love again, opening the idea that I could be vulnerable again, opening the idea that I could be a sexual being again. Like all of these things appeared to be dropping in. And with all of this, also an awareness that there were still masks, things that wanted to be hidden behind. But a complete awareness of those now versus shielding them or protecting them or thinking they were scary or somehow would break me if I didn't correct them. Coming to terms with aging and a real intellectual knowing inside myself that I'm okay with aging and it's a beautiful process. loving everything about it, loving the wrinkles, loving the loose skin, loving the age spots, acceptance of those, finding beauty in those, still loving who I am, even with those things going on. Being able to look in the mirror and say, oh, look, a new wrinkle. I must have been laughing so hard to earn that. Or maybe crying so horrifically and I've healed that. All of it's beautiful. All of it's part of this. To need to get away from any of it is where the pain comes. It's not the thing that's happening. It's not the wrinkle. It's not the lines. It's not the loose skin, right? It's not any of that. It's fear wanting that to go away or not be here, or it's denying it. Acceptance of it allows us to see the beauty of it. We've all seen that person who looks absolutely gorgeous. Everything about them is always perfect. Every hair, their skin, everything. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be beautiful on the outside as well as on the inside. But what I'm finding is that internal beauty, when it is so full of integrity and raw vulnerability, just exudes to the outside. We've all experienced this. Someone we've met and we've thought they're a lovely person, but as we get to know them, they become more and more attractive, more externally beautiful to us. We notice the twinkle in their eye, and we feel their life presence. And that's what we're drawn to. That's what we fall in love with. That's what I fall in love with. I can recognize external beauty and see that there's nothing behind here that matches that. And then all of a sudden, I don't find them attractive anymore. I'm sure we've all had that experience too. But I think what exudes beauty and what exudes what we fall in love with in another person is more about seeing their heart and the genuine nature of what they're offering in their words and their behaviors. Their actions are consistent and they show up in life willing to love from that consistency. It's not manipulated. It's not controlled. It's not, let me show up and love you this way until you fall in love with me, and then let me behave this way. And that's what I'm finding is very deep happening here in the story of Kelly, is just a beautiful consistency of love. I think if you were to speak to anyone in my life that knows me very well, they know that I show up consistently loving, or I work to be that presence for myself so that hopefully that's what I'm bringing forward to others. It's not about winning people over or manipulating them with a behavior. It's about showing up as love. What would love do? What would love say? How would love respond if love were a person? That's one of my very earliest videos. That's what this is about, guys. Vulnerability, rawness is being that. It's not about caring how you're perceived. Because if you're caught up in how another person's perceiving you, you're always going to wear a mask. There's always going to be something to hide behind. And then you have to manage that and micromanage that. And this is why love relationships often don't work. We show up with what I call the Monet, our prettiest picture. The paint is so absolutely perfectively put on the canvas. And the other falls in love with that. But a year into it, that paint starts to chip and the canvas starts to expose what's really there. And the other person feels duped. I fell in love with what I thought you were. So why not just show up as you are? No Monet. No splatters of paint on the canvas. Raw, real, foundational friendship, establishing a ground base. The best way to fall in love with someone in a romantic relationship is to show up as you are. Sweatpants, no makeup, makeup from yesterday, just sweaty clothes, working in a garden, the most raw, real version of yourself. If they can fall in love with you as that, they can certainly fall in love with you as your Monet. Then it's just a beautiful asset to enjoy the days that the Monet shows up. There's nothing wrong with the Monet. It's just not something you should have to try to maintain. It's an energy that's not true to your nature. It's an illusion. Play with the illusions. They're supposed to be part of this. We don't need to, keep them from our experience, but there's nobody that can maintain that. It's not real. And that's why love doesn't last. We fall in love with what we thought they were. This is why our children bring us the rawest version of themselves. Our friends will say they were so good when they came over for a play date, and then they come home to us and they crumble and they collapse and they throw their tantrums and they, throw the toys out of the cot, and we think, gosh, why did my friends get this beautiful child that had such manners and such lovely behaviors, and then they come home to me and collapse? That's beautiful, raw love, because you are their soft place to fall. And they know you will love them unconditionally there. And that is the one place they can bring that. But as a child, we lose that. We're conditioned to believe we need to go out into the world and carry that all the time. Be the illusion, we're told. Show up with your manners intact at all times. Hug the person you're afraid of. Go up to the stranger and make them feel welcome. We are conditioned from a young age to hide behind our Monet. How can we not get confused as we get older and older and older and think that's supposed to be the norm? So the vulnerability series, the photos that I shared, we've all done that. We pick ourselves apart. We find every imperfection. We find everything about ourselves we wish we could change. Every wrinkle, every crevice, every freckle, every bit of loose skin, every stretch line. We want to reverse aging. We want to go back to when we were younger. We talk about how we're old and we're not worthy anymore. We're not lovable. It's all bullshit. And we hide behind it. And we make it our excuse to stay stuck. I'm too old. There's nothing left for me to do. This is it. Etc., etc., etc. And I was guilty of it too. I was catching myself in it too. The one thing I knew intuitively with my physical body was that as I was doing all this healing from fasting and unhealthy foods, internally there was a knowing that I never wanted surgery or Botox or fillers or any of that stuff. I've worked so hard to become the healthiest physical vessel, and that work continues. It's part of my daily journey now. So I had to get very humble and honest with myself. Looking in the mirror, holding the loose skin, tugging at the wrinkles in the bags and the things, and telling them all you're loved, you're worthy, you're accepted. The love and the people that will find the love here, it's going to be because something's exuding from within, and that's going to attract them to the outside as well, just as it is, just as it's showing up. And please hear me, I don't judge anyone who chooses those things for themselves. This is only about my journey. I find beauty in everything and everyone. But sharing from my own journey and my own vulnerability processes and the unraveling of the Monet and the acceptance of the authenticity here, a huge part of that is this meat suit, right? It's the thing, the vessel that we seem to move around in. So recently, as I'm on this journey of working towards the book and working towards speaking engagements and all these things that have been coming to me for years that I've said no to until my son was off at college, and now he's off, and now they're all coming back. There was also a realization that I had to be very aware of what I'm okay with being out there in the world. And as you guys know, I have videos going back to 2008. You can see my body change. You can see my age change. You can see my physicality change. You can see me go through my illness where my thyroid died and the weight came on and then the weight came off. And none of my videos are edited. They're all raw. They're all real. They're all my truth. And I stand behind that. Every single bit of it. I don't want to change any aspect of that. If that has to change to get a book published or to find the right avenue for this voice, then that's not part of what this is meant for in the story of Kelly, because that's just not what I'm about. Vulnerability is showing up just as this moment is. Waking up next to the person you love, with drool dripping down your face, with your hair sticking up, with your morning breath, aging, all of the things that go with that. That's love. That's love. Tears are coming to my eyes because it's so beautiful and we fight it. Gosh, do we fight it? We want to hold on to preferences of being younger, preferences of being more beautiful, preferences of being more visibly desirable. And what we miss is the person watching us age who's going, God, you're magnificent. I find beauty in everything you do. And we can't hear that until we can. So the vulnerability photos, a process of breaking down the idea, the concept that anything needs to be different. The body, the age spots, the wrinkles, the stretch marks, the freckles, any of it. That any of it needs to be anything other than what it is. Sharing that, exposing it, and then being able to look at it and say, I see my beauty there. And guess what? When I see that in myself, I see it in each of you. I can love you right there. Every bit of you. I don't need you to show up perfect. I don't need you to show up with your Monet. In fact, that is the biggest turnoff to me. Come raw. Come vulnerable. Come naked. Come scared. Come terrified. Come collapsing. fall apart, break at my feet, I will sit there with you. I will hold you. I will love you because I have been there. I will wrap my arms around you and tell you how beautiful you are. I will cradle you. I will appreciate you, and I will love you with everything in my beingness because you are part of me. We are part of God. There's no separation. If I can't honor you there, I can't honor me there. If you're hiding behind a Monet, if you're afraid to put yourself out there, if you think your life is done, you're old, there's nothing further, you're staying in an empty relationship because you're afraid of stepping out of it, you're in an empty job because you're terrified, you're losing your children because they're leaving the nest, you're losing a partner because he's leaving you. Collapse. Go to the vulnerability. Love yourself there. The collapse is where the work begins. It's where the light gets in. All of those cracks are beautiful. There's no need to hide behind them anymore. They're not real. They're an illusion. They're not yours. They never were. As you point at another and speak of them, everything coming out of this mouth is about yourself. Every bit of it. The fear, the anger, the jealousy, the destruction. It's never about them. Not even a little bit. Not even a tiny bit. Vulnerability is gorgeous. It exudes the light of God from the soul to the earth. It's what you fall in love with about yourself. There I am being that. My God self is shining. My universal self, whatever you call it. The energy that is love. That's what we fall in love with in an apparent other. And that's unconditional love. And then we're able to show up and offer that to ourselves and to the world. And it's genuine. It's not forced. It's not manipulative. It's not controlling. And the other person feels that. They feel your care for them. They feel your nurturing. They feel that you trust them. They feel that you're proud of them. It lifts them to want to be the better version of themselves that they see in your eyes. Not the Monet. The raw one that can show up and collapse and cry in your arms and say, I love you so much. I love you so much. Thank you for loving me so much. So I wanted to do this today to reflect back on that series of vulnerability images and speak to it a little bit more so that you understood where I was coming from. Sitting in front of somebody in that vulnerable state and allowing them to take photographs, someone that you trust. It had to be someone I trusted. Tears flowing from my eyes, hearing myself say, no, not that angle. Oh my gosh, don't show that. Make sure you edit that out of the photos. And at the end of the day, we did not edit the photos at all. There were some blurring effects based on the way we took the photos in some of them, but I wanted them to be the raw, real photos. And I'll add some more of them here now that I've done this video. I don't know if I can actually put them in the video because I'm not very good at video editing, so I may just put them on the Nurture Your Soul page. But the whole intention of this vulnerability series is not to be sexual. It's not to be seeking attention. It's to say, look, I am a 52, well, a few weeks away from 52. I am a 52-year-old woman who's finally fully in love with herself. And because of that, I'm finally fully able to love others. Fully. Unconditionally. Truly. Rawly. Tears just flow out of these eyes all the time, and they're not sad. It's the amount of euphoria that's coming from this heart center because it is so open. And it's why I got the tattoo, stay open. Stay open. Stay open. Breathe and don't resist. Stay open. Nothing to hide behind. Breathe and don't resist, what the angels told me. That's my only role here. That's it. Keep that heart open. Don't hide behind a Monet. It's okay to do your hair. It's okay to feel pretty. It's okay to want to dress up and enjoy the aspects of being human. Nobody's saying you can't enjoy these things. Celebrate all of them, but hide behind none of them. They're not your truth. And then when you're able to do that, you're able to offer that to others. And that's why they fall in love with you. It's your heart they're falling in love with. It's your genuine nature of being. They trust it because they can feel when you say, I trust you, I love you, I'm proud of you, I adore you, you mean everything to me. That's real. They're not just words. When I tell someone I love them, I don't know that the other person understands how deeply those words are and profoundly said here. They're not just words. There's action behind it. And that action isn't me. It's God, Godding. It's energy, energying. It's rawing. It's vulnerability. It's lifing. Exploding fully into this love that is loving. Until next time, much love. I see you, each one of you, and I absolutely love you.